Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, of course, Frank Zaberick, and in the great words of that game show host of Family Feud, Steve Harvey, we got another good one for you, ladies and gentlemen. So, again, for the past two episodes, I guess, I was talking about my ventures at Soulfest. I make, that's kind of my summer vacation, so to speak, every year. And this year was at the Topsfield, Massachusetts, Topsfield County Fairgrounds. And lo and behold, I ran into, in the display tables, and ran into, a display table for an online fundraising group called Give, Sin, Go.
Right.
And they really took off in the past 2 or 3 years, mainly because of a guy named Kyle Rittenhouse, who's kind of like a vigilante out of Wisconsin. Well, he was involved in the Black Lives Matters riots in Wisconsin, and he killed 2 people and shot another, and then he needed money to defend himself, so he went to Give, Sin, Go. And another one in north of the border here, the Canadian truckers. Right. I guess they were protesting or something in Canada, so they needed some fundraising. Long story short, I'm blessed to have the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer / founder of Give, Sin, Go, Jacob Wells. Jacob, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Frank. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Just to give him, to get him in the mood here, I got Jacob, we were talking, we got into a tangent here, and but that was all good. But, and there's a ton of questions I'd love to ask you, but before we do that, one thing I like to do, especially for a first-time guest like yourself on Frankly Speaking, can you tell my TV / internet audience a little bit about yourself, Jacob?
Sure.
And what interests you to get involved in Give, Sin, Go?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. I've got a pretty interesting background, I would say. I'm one of 12 children. Large family.
Wow.
Right here in southern New Hampshire, just down the road in Salem. Grew up one of 12, 6 boys and 6 girls, and even split. We doubled the Brady Bunch. And I'm number 5. I'm kind of hidden in the middle of that pack. Just grew up with an amazing set of parents who raised us there in Salem. And after my time growing up in Salem, I joined the military in my early 20s and left for the Navy and became a cryptologist in the U.S. Navy, which was an interesting field in itself. Got stationed on an aircraft carrier in Norfolk, Virginia, called CVN 75, the Harry S. Truman, and did a couple deployments with them between the years of 2001. Shortly after 9/11, it was just kind of happenstance. I was already lined up to go, and then 9/11 happened, and then I was being shipped off to boot camp and got my learning in cryptology and then sent to the ship and did a couple deployments between that time frame, 2001 to 2006, when I got out. And after getting out of the military, sat around in that Norfolk, Hampton Roads area, Norfolk, Virginia Beach area, involved a little bit in real estate. I had engaged in real estate at the end of my time in the Navy. I was renting to shipmates that I had. I bought a duplex and had rooms. And so I'm just kind of entrepreneurial in my bent. And my dad owned his own tree business. There's probably people here in the Nashua area and around that used him. Rich's Tree Service was a staple in the tree industry here in southern New Hampshire for a long time, for 40 years before he retired a couple of years ago. But after that time of getting out of the Navy and having real estate, I was negotiating my way through that, met my wife down there. We had 3 children and really felt the pull to come back here up to New England. My wife was from New England as well. And we moved back in 2013. And then this idea for a crowdfunding alternative, a fundraising alternative to GoFundMe kind of presented itself to us in that there's a lot of technology revolution happening, or just an innovation. People creating new websites. The internet was kind of really hitting a stride, and social media platforms were really gaining traction. And on the back of those social media platforms, the Facebooks and the Twitters and Instagram, funding as an opportunity became a realization. People realized, wow, we're connecting all of these people. Well, why don't we create ways for them to fund things with these crowds of people? And so crowdfunding sites like Kickstarter and GoFundMe came onto the scene. I looked at that with a couple sisters who we were sitting down having a conversation with about this rise in crowdfunding and opportunity around it. And with having so many siblings that we did, many of them seeing their friends and family using GoFundMe, and us having a faith background. I grew up in a traditional, non-denominational Christian background, and went to Bible college, actually, myself for a little period of time in Boston prior to the Navy. And then even after I got out, I did a little bit. Really had an idea for fundraising that was bigger than just, I use the term narcissism of the term GoFundMe. Like our American ideology is all about self. And from the Christian faith perspective, the Christian faith is all about selflessness, not selfishness. It's just the opposite. It's about outward focus, not inward. And we said, is there a fundraising platform that doesn't buy into that selfish narrative, but actually plays to the bigger narrative of living selflessly, living relationally, and sacrificing into things? And there wasn't really anything happening. And we're like, well, what an opportunity. We believe this. Let's create a platform that actually carries that essence of fundraising with hope beyond just, hey, method to raise money from your community. So.
Oh, no, I mean, the two names sound very eerily similar. And I'm not a lawyer, or I don't play one on TV or anything like that. But I'm wondering, when you and your sisters or your sister came up with the name, was there any backlash from GoFundMe saying, there's a little bit of plagiarism here?
No, not at all, because the names actually are quite unique amongst themselves. They are both 3-word names. Ours are all action words that have their own meanings that we chose specifically for give, send, and go. We did have a name early on that might have been the name that we were going to use. It was actually Go Send Me versus Go Fund Me.
Yeah.
And that was really close. And in talking to the attorneys that we had helping structure some of it, they said, hey, you know what? It's probably not a smart idea because there's only 2 letters separating those 2 phrases.
And they could make a big stink out of it.
Yeah, and they could make a stink. So give, send goes much safer. There's really no overlap there.
And no, I tried to on my due diligence in preparation for this show. Well, first, I love Yelp. I'm a disciple of Yelp. Okay. And if I have a problem with, let's say mechanics, lawyers, or restaurants, right, I'll weigh in. Or if I like a lawyer, mechanic, or restaurant, I'll give them, good. 5 stars and stuff like that. And lo and behold, there's nothing in Yelp.com because you don't really work out of a service or a community per se.
Right.
You do worldwide, and so doesn't GoFundMe.
Right. And, part of it is there is those business models, Yelp and some of the other online ratings, they can be a little tricky in how they try to get you to set up and pay for their service to be able to respond to people. And we've kind of just shied away. Our users know that we're reputable, that we do what we're supposed to do. We do have some reviews. What we did find with some, whether it's even Google reviews that we have people have jumped on and done stuff like that, that many people, and this is some of the difficulty, they hop on, they're open to anybody to just write nonsense, having never used the platform before. It's like, well, I'm not going to debate with somebody or even engage with somebody that's never used the platform. They just don't like the stance that we took on a particular issue. That has nothing to do with our service.
Amen.
And how we actually, are we fulfilling the job, which is what we do. We actually fulfill. And that's why we're now in 80 countries and people using us around the world, because they love what we're doing.
To the best of your knowledge, does any other, I would assume GoFundMe is at least in 80 countries.
No, not even close.
Not even close.
No, I think last I checked, it was just a couple months ago, they were in 19. Yeah. So we are pushing the boundaries in every direction, because our vision statement at Give, Send, Go is to be the global leader in crowdfunding for individual situations, this type of crowdfunding model that we're in, donation-based. And so we want to be on the ground floor in countries where GoFundMe hasn't even stepped yet. So we are in places all around the world, being used by people to fundraise for incredible things. I know, we might step into talking about some of the controversy, but by and large, so much about what happens on Give, Send, Go is communities rallying together to help people in need. And we're incredibly blessed to be a part of that piece of the puzzle for them and providing a service that helps them do that.
Now, watching your sister, I've seen your sister on videos more so than yourself. And maybe I'm mistaken, I'm misquoting her, but you can correct me right here. You've been in business, Give, Send, Go has been in business for like 5 or 6 years now?
So actually longer than that. We officially launched the end of 2015. So that's 8 years.
Oh.
Yeah, so we rolled out as a kind of test platform in mid-2015. And we got some early adopters just to get the platform going. And we were able to stabilize what we had, make sure it was working properly for people. And then we had an official launch the end of the year and rolled out full steam ahead in January of 2016.
So, your sister's name is Heather?
Right. Yep.
Heather was saying, now please correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys were floundering until Kyle Rittenhouse and the Canadian truckers came along.
Yeah, I guess it would depend on what she meant by the word floundering and in what capacity. As our business, like I mentioned to you before the show, we didn't do the traditional startup model of borrowing a lot of money, taking on venture capital to grow quickly and do all that. We said, you know what, we want to be wise stewards of what we have. We're going to grow within our means. We're going to grow with the funds that the platform itself makes to continue growing it instead of borrowing debt, taking on debt to grow the company. And so we grew slow and steady. As much as we wanted to grow faster, we grew slow and steady. And we put a lot of time and effort. And that time and effort, if anyone's been an entrepreneur for any amount of time starting a business, it's hilltops and valleys. I mean, it is a journey of mountaintop experience and valley lows. You get a great campaign, things look like you're getting some momentum, and then it's a lull. So there was a level of, hey, we're growing every year. Like I mentioned, we were growing 100% annually from 2016 to 2020. But it's a very small growth when you're going from 10 users to 20 users to 40 users to 80 users.
Yeah.
But eventually that becomes 10,000 to 20,000 to 40,000 users, and it becomes really big. And we saw that, and I think there was definitely an element to what she was saying of floundering, of, that slow moment and having some frustration in it too, of like, oh, it's not happening fast enough.
Did you and your sister have to work second jobs to make ends meet in your marriages and your household?
I bet our spouses would have said, yes, they should have been. But fortunately, at the time, and just circumstantially, and I think a lot of things in life are just circumstantial around how things play themselves out. But having come out of the Navy and having positioned myself with some real estate and put myself in a decent situation. My wife was doing a tremendous job as a Pilates instructor, owning her own Pilates studio. Once she moved up here, and so she had things going on. I bought a foreclosure home in Massachusetts that we bought. So I was taking my physical skill sets of fixing things and actually rebuilding, getting our house nicer, and at the same time, as I was pouring into Give, Send, Go. So I had this project of, well, let me work on the house and work on Give, Send, Go. So I had a good blend, but I didn't have a second job.
And neither did your sister.
Neither did she. Her husband's business was just taking off as well. He's an IT company. So it worked. It really worked out well that both of us were really to devote a lot of time to making sure that the business was successful, because businesses, especially at the beginning, just like newborn babies, they require constant attention, especially businesses that are 24/7 platforms that don't sleep at night. There's a lot of work for years and years and years from 2015 to 2020.
And in the beginning, you had another sister in the business.
Yes.
But it wasn't her cup of tea.
Yeah, I think it was, she wasn't in the same position and place that Heather and I found ourselves in, to be able to devote that type of time and energy to really taking something like a new baby and caring for it 24/7. And so it was just the choice early on, right before we even did that official launch, that she was just going to take a side seat to it and step out of it while Heather and I carried it on. So
I see.
Yeah.
And also, it goes without saying. I mean, and brotherly love and sisterly love and stuff like that. and people saying you should never go in business with your relatives, especially blood siblings.
I've heard that many times. I don't agree with that, because I see what's happening between my sister Heather and I, where we work extremely well together. It's really a matter of personality. I think there's a symptomatic aspect in society that we used to have a society of premarital counseling before you jumped into marriage. We don't do that anymore largely. I think when you come into a relationship, if you guys are on the same page, whether it's a business relationship, whatever the other type of relationship, if you guys are really aligned with goals and visions, you can do great together. And if you jump in too quickly and your goals aren't aligned, you end up finding out down the road. And I think with family relationships, why it's gotten a bad name is oftentimes people think that they know their brother or their sister or whoever they're getting into relationship with for business, thinking that they know them. And then all of a sudden they don't realize, wait a second, how you do business is very different than how I do business. And there's a lot of tension. Fortunately for Heather and I, we're really on the same page with almost everything.
So really I assume when you were little kids and teenagers, you never really had arguments with Heather.
Yeah, right. Well, part of being part of a big family is there's an age difference. She was number 2, so she's a bit older, and I'm number 5, so there's a 4 or 5 year difference. So we kind of had different cliques in the Wells clan of people that we hung out with. So there wasn't overly too much interaction between Heather and I growing up. I was kind of just a little younger for her. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But it's good that you bounce ideas off each other and a successful business. But one thing I was going to suggest to you is maybe going on that show Shark Tank.
Oh,
and just you and Heather going on and asking the sharks for 1% of your business or $1 million for 1% of your business.
That
probably they might reject you, but you'll get 15 minutes of national, international airtime, visibility.
That has been a thought. We've actually had that thought before. Like, you know what? Maybe. And some people do it just for that. They say, here's an opportunity.
Exactly.
Even if I don't get a deal, millions of people are going to see me because they watch this show. And so it's definitely been in there. There's a lot on the Give, Send, Go plate right now where the growth is continuing to happen. And like I said, we're already in so many places. It's super cool to see how big we've grown already. And there's still a lot more growth to come. So maybe it still is an idea that we could pitch to them.
That might be. And also, I was going to say to you, the guy who sits in the middle, who's my favorite shark of all, Kevin O'Leary.
Oh, Kevin, yes.
I don't think he's shaved head. I think he's just bald. But anyhow, but he has a good philosophy. He would look at somebody like you and says, Jacob, I have an old philosophy here. That if you got three years in a business and you're not making any profit, you don't really have a business. You've got a hobby. But you and your sister kind of
Prove that wrong.
Because you hung on for 5 or 6 years.
Well, I think the reality is, and you can look at the numbers on startups, it's like 96% of startups fail within 3 to 5 years.
Oh.
It's a huge failure rate for new companies. And I think largely because, one, people only have a threshold for lending you money so long until you make it. I think we had a whole bunch of the right perspectives in it. We had a business idea that was something that people appreciated. We saw people adopting it. It was really the limitation that we had was money. It was that we didn't have $1 million marketing budget to push out there and get our name in front of everybody. But as soon as people did find out about us, they jumped on board. And so we marketed early on to Christians in particular through a lot of guerrilla marketing, free avenues, really unique ways that attacked our competitors' user base and were able to get their customers that identified as Christians and brought them over to our platform. That gave us a good base. But I do think there is a level of stick-to-itiveness. If you've got a good idea, you've got a good product, and you have good advisors around you, and you can stick it out, then stick it out. And sometimes the ramp just takes a little bit longer than that 3 to 5 years. I just think some businesses, whether it's their spouses or their personal financial situation or whatever, it just prevents them from carrying on too long. Or the fear. The longer you go without having really made a good profit margin, you begin to question and have fear yourself. Well, I got to get into another business where I can make some money because my life is passing away and I'm not setting aside for the future or whatever. I don't have that. So all of those things were part of the journey.
Okay. So getting back to Yelp for a second, one of my favorite internet sites, Yelp.com. I couldn't find you or GoFundMe on Yelp, but I did find a site called TrustPilot.com.
Right. Yes.
But, okay, well, they rated you more stars. The 5-star ratings, I mean, GoFundMe had a ton more of reviews.
Right.
But they had a lesser star rating. Where was it? I got it somewhere in here.
Yeah.
But anyway, they only gave you, let's see,
it's in there somewhere, 3.5 stars.
Yeah, 3.5 stars. Yeah. But the complaints against you, mostly, and like you said, it doesn't sound like they used you at all.
No, they didn't. I mean, we review those. We've reviewed those Trustpilot, and even responded to some. And some people are open and forthright that they didn't use our platform. They just don't like us, and some just lie their way through it and try to say that they did. And we have a database we can tell whether you use us or not, and you didn't. So sorry. And then it's a question of, and this is why it's like you can buy Trustpilot service in order to respond to those things and get. But we have plenty of good reviews on there as well, people that appreciate our service. So.
But the criticisms against you and your sister for Give, Send, Go, how do you respond to something like that? If you in favor of Kyle Rittenhouse and to represent him, you must be racist. You must be a white supremacist. You're into misinformation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, it's the common pejoratives of people that don't really know us. The reality is we weren't for Kyle Rittenhouse. We were for our justice system as being the best place for people to be adjudicated, for his case to be resolved in. What we saw happening and have seen happening is social media platforms becoming the playground of what's right and wrong. Like, oh, this is right because I have a loud voice and I can make something go viral. It's like, well, no, that doesn't determine whether things are right or wrong. A 10-second clip that you might have taken out of taken out of context and then snipped by somebody or whatever else. And that was actually seen in Kyle. It was actually shown in Kyle Rittenhouse's case in his trial, where there was a lot of video evidence that had never been put out on social media, had never been presented to the public, and actually lent itself to him being exonerated, which is what he was. He was found not guilty. in his trial. Now, that wasn't a win for Give, Send, Go. He said whether he'd been found innocent or guilty was somewhat irrelevant to us. The question to us is, do people have a presumption of innocence until proven guilty in a court of law? They're supposed to. And not only are they supposed to, they need to if we want to preserve our democracy. In the organizations that are coming out against Give, Send, Go for upholding that idea are the ones that are really undermining our democracy. They're trying to undermine our judicial system and saying, well, it's only the wealthy that can hire their own personal defenses and not the economically depressed people. And that's what crowdfunding does. It gives economically depressed people access and avenues to funds so that they can afford a similar type of defense, the best defense, just like a wealthy person might. So it's really a liberal idea what we're championing, the idea of economic privilege for everybody, leveling the playing fields. And I look at some of these companies that are attacking us and say, you know what, they're really attacking, they're the ones attacking democracy. These are fundamental ideas, innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, not public opinion, that you have due process. It's not just however we want to handle this. There's actually due process, and this is written into our Constitution. So, that's how we handle it. One of the phrases that we came up with as a team just to talk about and what we were going to do is we were going to let our actions speak louder than their words.
Amen.
And some of the ways that we do that, and I mentioned to you a little bit before, are things like we call and we pray with all of our campaign owners. We actually point them to a reality that there are bigger things in this world than just the circumstances that they find themselves in. That's a de-escalatory thing. It says that there's a God, he knows what's going on, he's not surprised by the reality of the world right now, and that he cares about you and he values you. So that's an amazing de-escalatory principle. It again levels the playing field for people. We're all created equal. We're all made in his image. So something that we do, that our actions are speaking louder than their words, something there. We give thousands and thousands of dollars away monthly to campaigns to help them complete their goals. Campaigns of adopting children, making a difference in the world, rebuilding homes and fires, things that happened. When the Covenant school shooting happened, we helped a fundraiser that raised tens of thousands of dollars for the families involved in that tragic situation. The fires out in Hawaii, we've seen hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars raised for relief efforts there. We're involved in helping facilitate and even giving away out of the proceeds of some of what we get back to these initiatives to make a better world. And so our actions are speaking louder. We're going to continue to champion that, to let our actions be louder than their words.
So getting back to your criticism,
right.
Well, I'm assuming you're a heck of a lot younger than me, and so isn't Heather, which is fine. That's cool. Yeah. But you're looking at 20, 30 years from right now, do you think you'll still be involved with Give, Send, Go, you and your sister? And if not, are you and your sister what they call canceled right now, according to the woke community?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, well, to your first question, 30 or 40 years from now, we have a great vision, obviously, to see that vision enacted of becoming the primary fundraising vehicle for individuals globally. It's going to take a lot of work and it's going to take time. And so we're going to spend the next several years doing that. And it goes beyond just even in our minds, let's say superficial, and I don't mean that our product is superficial, but what crowdfunding is it is an easy way to perform financial transactions and deliver money between parties. What we want to do is even deepen our structure so that we're involved more so in the payment industry at deeper levels, whether it's in creating banking infrastructure that believes in these same principles of freedom and democracy and freedom of speech and allowing people to have voice ideas, even ideas that aren't necessarily ones that people like to hear. That's the value of free speech. So that's the 30 or 40 year vision, is a vision to really continue on the work, grow it, but also get deeper with some of the things and the payment things that we're doing. And the second part of your question, which was, we talked about.
That you're gonna are you canceled? Are you
right.
canceled according to the woke community?
Yeah, well, they're definitely attempting to cancel us. If you, and I don't suggest that anyone out there do this.
Yeah.
But you could Google Give, Send, Go, and you're going to find a barrage of articles from mainstream publications that have deliberately attempt to come after us because we're trying to navigate a very contentious space. And so there's attempts to cancel us. There have been attempts to cancel us. There's been attempts, whether it's calls to our underlying server providers and having them, demand that they take us off their platforms, or some of the payment structures and systems that are in place, calls to them to demand that we be taken off. It was probably 5-6 months ago that 20 legislatures in Congress, some senators, some representatives, wrote a letter to Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, to try to get us kicked out of the financial system, all based on largely, and one of them was an article from the ADL, which is unfortunate. They didn't contact us to talk about anything that they wrote, but it was mistruths. It was just an article built around deception and mistruths, and then what happens is you've got legislators that take those types of articles that think that it's actually fact-checked and newsworthy, and then they run with it and try to cancel people based on it. We've been able to stand up under the test of those things and continue, and I think it's, we give God that glory, is that he's at our back in that this is bigger than Heather and I. This is big. This is an opportunity to engage the world in an amazing way and stand for freedom and try to navigate with grace to even people that we don't agree with on both sides of the aisle, whether it's a campaign that we're allowing that we don't agree with, because there are campaigns that come to us that we don't agree with. People think that because there's a campaign on Give, Send, Go, that somehow we support it. It's like, no, they do their own fundraising. We're not fundraising for them. They're fundraising from their own supporters. But also that we somehow agree with it. It's like, no, that's the furthest thing from the truth. No different than if you made a post on Facebook, somehow that would obligate Facebook to believe and support what you wrote. It's like, we're a platform. And yes, things can get contentious, and we have to navigate that. And we're trying to do it with wisdom. It's not as easy as people try to make it to be, you just shut off all of this and you shut off all of that and you don't. It's like, no, you know what? I'm a military veteran. I come from a family of veterans. And people died for the freedom that we have. Literally, their arms and legs were blown off in wars, and their families suffered the grief of those tragic children without fathers, all of these things, so that we could live in freedom. We're not going to trample on that just because you are upset about something. Now, we'll have a conversation and we'll try to navigate it, but we're going to err on the side of freedom. We're going to try to operate with that sense of freedom. Because we value the sacrifices that were made by people. And I'm not going to walk on somebody's blood that was poured out in disgracing what they sacrificed for because some people are upset about something. And that's kind of the default. But we do want to grow, and we want to listen to people, and we want to learn from people. And so we're in that journey. I never sit in a position of saying, we know it all. We got it all together. You can't talk to us about anything. No. Any side, let's have a conversation. Let's figure this out.
So when a person wants to, let's say like Kyle Rittenhouse finds himself arrested, in trouble, saying, boy, I might need like $1 million or so for my legal defense fund. So they come to you, he comes to you, Give, Send, Go, and is he obligated to pay like a couple $100 up front, or do you take a percentage of what he raises and keep it for yourself?
That's a great question, and it goes again to the heart of who we are. We are about generosity. We believe, first in a God that was very generous with us. And so we wanted to showcase generosity on our site. We said we're going to change the model of how crowdfunding is. We're going to operate on generosity. When all the other platforms were running off of a platform fee, they were taking 5 to 10% of every donation. So you set up a campaign, you're not paying anything up front, but when someone gives you money, They're taking 5% off the top, 10% off the top. That was the traditional model. We looked at it and said, it doesn't make sense to take money from people that need it. These people are raising money because they've got difficult situations happening in their lives, whether their house just burnt down or a medical diagnosis of cancer that they just came on them or whatever, all of these things. Why are we taking money from people that are raising it because they need this money? So we said, let's ask givers, people that are coming to the site to give to these campaigns, to give a little bit more, see if they're willing to give a little bit more, to give, send, go, to keep us free. That's how we generate our revenue. We have, it takes a lot. People think you're on a website, it doesn't take anything to run these things. No, it takes a lot. There's infrastructure, there's code development, like to have a stable platform, like growth, all of these different things. It takes a significant amount. So what we do is when people go to give to a campaign, there's an optional box for them to donate a little bit extra, and they can change it. They can put it up or down or zero or whatever. They can make it what they want. It's voluntary. And what we've seen is that givers are givers, and they come to give to campaigns. They're willing to give us a little bit extra because they love what we're doing and the hope that we're sharing in the midst of everything that we do. And so that's how we generate our revenue.
And how does... So one thing about like why Kyle Rittenhouse would go to like somebody like yourself to collect money, if he put down like his street address, so a lot of nutcases will probably go down and try to bump him off.
Well, yeah, I mean, we definitely don't recommend putting personal information out there on your campaign. But the biggest thing, especially, over the past 5 to 10 years, is the rise in censorship of things that are would be traditionally considered very normal, like not outside the realm of something to question or talk about. And the reason why a Kyle Rittenhouse campaign came to us is because GoFundMe and all the other big platforms said, no, 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 no. You can't raise legal defense funds on our site. And for us, it comes to us and we get kind of waking up out of our sleep of just being a platform, happy-go-lucky, helping people and never really having this type of controversy, to being in a situation where you have thousands of people yelling at us saying, take it down, and thousands of people donating in support of it as well and sending messages of prayer. And then come to find out, as we responded to the people that were writing negatively, emailing in to take it down, we found out that the vast majority of them were actually bots. They weren't real email addresses. So you have a couple kids in a college, a dorm room somewhere that are being paid $25, $30 an hour to just spam sites to make it seem like that there's this loud, angry voice. And not that there wasn't, there definitely was an element. But as far as people even reaching out, what we found, because we want to engage with people that we don't agree with as well, not just the people that we agree with, we would try to talk with them and engage in an email conversation, and you're getting bounced back. This email is not a valid email. This email, so we're using spam email to try to make it sound like there was a loud voice to take it down. And unfortunately, some crowdfunding platforms and social media platforms, whatever, if anyone criticizes anything, they immediately like, oh, I've got to do something. It's like, well, no, because you don't even know that it's legitimate first. So that wasn't our first reaction, and then we allowed the campaign, and then we started to see, well, this is a really polarized situation. There's people on both sides. It's not black and white. It's not like he went into a store and just started shooting at people, whatever. Yeah. It was different. It was a different type of circumstance. Like the best place
Defending his grandfather or his uncle's auto parts shop, I think was the story.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't want to see it burnt down, just like the rest of that community in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and he was running the whole time. Like he was running away from people. So, incredible. But yeah, the media did their own spin on that. And we said, you know what, it's important, especially with the way that social media and media can amplify the voices of one side over the other, and they do. It's more and more important now, more than ever, to allow people access to funds for a legal defense. Because you can get skewed voices so easily, and people are like, oh, I know everything about it. No, you just listen to one vein, so you think you do. He needs now more than ever, more money than ever, to actually get true justice in the court system, because he's fighting an uphill battle of media. And this isn't necessarily Kyle Rittenhouse. This is anybody that finds himself in a difficult situation like that. You're fighting an uphill battle against people that ideologically are out against you and are trying to shift the narrative. You need access to funds to get a level playing field, so all the evidence can come out, so that you can get the witnesses flown in so that they can testify, whatever, all of that stuff. It's why we do it, because we're trying to uphold these basic values of, one, decency, not your own God and everything that you think is true. It's like, no, you should always be questioning even what you think. And like
also, one point I'd like to bring out, like in Kyle Rittenhouse's case, he had at least both GiveSendGo and GoFundMe representing him to collect money. And there was another one I saw recently on YouTube somewhere, East Palestine, Ohio, the chemical water. I guess they're complaining or trying to fight that, or...
Well, there was a train derailment in Palestine.
Okay, trail derailment.
But with Kyle was kicked off of GoFundMe. He wasn't allowed to use them. And then when he was exonerated in court and found not guilty, GoFundMe said, oh, okay, well, you can use us now. It's kind of like it's too late. So he's continued to use GiveSendGo and fundraise, because now he's involved in civil suits and et cetera.
And East Palestine, I heard they're using, saying, send your donations to either GiveSendGo or GoFundMe.
Yeah, no, there's, and that's oftentimes happens. Some people know about GoFundMe. They haven't heard about GiveSendGo yet. We're still a lot smaller, even here in the U.S., even having millions of people have now used us. It's amazing how people can miss news stories and just not be involved in a certain thing and not hear when we're involved in a big news situation. And so we are slowly expanding. We're slowly grabbing. GoFundMe, I think, laid off, I saw the article, 20% of their workforce a couple months back, like many other big tech companies. And we are hiring. We hired 5 people over the past 5 weeks. Like, we just keep hiring people because we're growing. And so we're seeing that shift happen. And what we realize is that when you operate with integrity and neutrality to some, you have the opportunity to engage with the most customers. It's called free markets.
Amen.
When you segment your customers and you say, hey, you know what? We don't like you segment of customers and we're going to shut you down, shut you off. Free markets open the opportunity for platforms like us to come in and dominate, where we're not getting into the mix of.
And we were talking a little bit off camera here about how your main competitor here, GoFundMe, has been brought down to earth a little bit by the Canadian truckers.
Right. Oh yeah, I mean that was an incredible story.
Particularly, there was a YouTube comedian, JP Sears,
right? Yeah,
and his Awaken with JP.
Yeah, well, I've had the opportunity to meet him briefly at an event once, but super funny.
Yeah,
funny guy. Does some great comic stuff, and he has a podcast, and he shared at that time, it was February or March timeframe, when the trucker movement was happening of 2022, so a year and a half ago. And he did a blurb on how GoFundMe, and I think he had a communist sign embedded into their logo or something like that, about how they literally came out of the blue and said, we're going to take this money and we're going to give it to people that we want to. It was really a watershed moment.
In the neighborhood of $9 million.
Right. It's not a little bit of money, like an incredible amount of money. After they spent the previous 2 years, from 2020 to 2022, allowing fundraisers for Antifa and BLM members as they rioted throughout the city and were looking for bailout funds after being arrested for those situations. So GoFundMe was just showing their colors, I think, in that moment, where they fell ideologically. We've kind of just said, listen, you know what? We understand that there's extremities happening in society. The best way to approach even bad speech is with good speech, which is what we do by praying with people and trying to engage in conversation, not shut it down. And GoFundMe, unfortunately, showed themselves to be the opposite. Though they are changing their colors, there was a campaign I say changing their cause. I don't know that they're really changing anything other than realizing that if they continue on that path, they're going to lose their business. Because 2 or 3 months ago, there was a big incident in France. Another situation, a police officer was involved in a shooting. There was a bunch of riots and unrest around it. And they allowed the police officer to fundraise, his family to fundraise on his behalf, after having been in an altercation where he shot, from what I understand, an unarmed kid, where they never would have allowed that before, and it was against their terms of service. And in America, they cut off a whole bunch of police officers that were involved in similar situations with Breonna Taylor and all these a whole bunch of different situations. And so when we see the pressure that Give, Send, Go is putting on them, to actually begin to change their stances back, bring some neutrality to the environment. And we're still a better company. I mean, at least that's our view, honestly.
Oh, okay. And one more, you keep mentioning the word crowdfunding.
Right.
Is crowdfunding synonymous with online fundraising? Are they the same thing, or is there a difference between the two terms?
No, they're pretty close to being synonymous. I mean, crowdfunding is tapping in. Social media allowed you to gain followers, right? You have a Facebook page, you got all these people that you're connected, relationship. You have your crowd of people that are around your profile. And crowdfunding was just an online fundraising opportunity within your crowd of people and then beyond. So yeah, pretty much synonymous, those two terms.
Oh, okay. I kind of figured that, but I was, and okay. So so like somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse would come in, and he'd sign up. He'd agree to have the funds going to like a bank of his choosing,
right?
In a credit, like a savings account, checking account type thing.
So how the platform works is very simple. Okay. You go on to givesendgo.com and you click the start a campaign buttons all over the place. Okay. And it immediately takes you through creating your campaign. Within 10 minutes, you could have your campaign page up and ready and to begin receiving donations. Once you're ready to receive the money that you've raised, you have to go through a verification process. And so we have safety and security layers to ensure that funds are going who they're supposed to go to, not somebody just fraudulently, misrepresenting who they are or whatever. So we have all these layers. We have a security verification team, payout specialist team, and they review all of those things. And they're making sure that everybody's verified the way that they're supposed to be. We're also passing people's information through terrorist watch lists, databases, so that you don't have people that are not allowed on financial platforms because they're associated with legitimate terrorist organizations. You have to pass people through that. Somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse or any number would never be on a list like that. So they upload their information, they verify themselves, they submit a request for their payout of the funds that they raised. It comes to our team, we do just a double check to make sure everything's good, and it goes out. So it's a very simple, streamlined process.
And so, if like somebody like me, I don't know if it's closed up or officially closed, or is he still collecting money? Does he still have to pay lawyers?
He does, and he still is. Yeah, wow. And you can keep it. You can keep your campaign going indefinitely. What we see is the average campaign usually only lasts for 2 to 3 months. It's not that long. Usually they're incident related. Something happened, and so they're short lived. But there are scenarios where people have a long-term situation and they keep their page open and they're occasionally getting donations. We have a policy that after 6 months, if you haven't received any donations, we unpublish your campaign so that it's just not floating around out there for, and clogging up the space of our site for campaigns that are actively receiving donations. And you can turn it back on if you want. It's a simple process.
It hasn't had 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's kind of dead, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's that ain't half bad. But I can't think of anything else. I think we covered everything. Yeah, I know. Time flies when you're having fun.
Right. Well, I mean, we definitely had a lot of fun.
Was this your first time at Soulfest?
That's a good question too. So it was 4 or 5 years ago. We actually did another sponsorship with them, and so it's been a couple years, but we were happy to be back and be a part of what Soulfest is doing. We love the artists that they're able to bring in and the crowd that we're able to engage with. We had opportunity to engage with some of the people. We spoke, did a session on a stage for an hour, my sister and I, talking to people about Give, Send, Go, who we are, answering people's questions. We love to answer people's questions. Okay. Because we can have conversation and let people know the skinny on what's really going on. Because you do get, like I said, some mainstream articles that just, their intent is to paint a picture regardless of what you say. Doesn't matter. Their goal is to paint you a certain way. And I think the reason why we continue to have levels of success is people actually get to know us and they're like, wait a second, they're not anything like that article that I read. These are just real people that love people, come from a big family, have a great family dynamic. That's the environment of even our workspace is like family. We're family. And we invite people into our family, our crowdfunding family. And that's the users of Give, Send, Go, which is why one of the things we have coming up is our annual Give, Send, Go Gala, which we started a couple years ago. Oh. Which is a fantastic event. It was held up here in Wyndham for a couple years, and now we're in Boston. And we get to celebrate. What we wanted to do is celebrate people that are using our platform and givers on the platform. You do see on Give, Send, Go people that have given hundreds and hundreds of times. They come onto our site to use it as a way to just give back to communities. And I love seeing that. I love going in and seeing that so-and-so has given for the 300th time, $100 to a campaign. Some people, that's just their life is like, they've been blessed financially and they're there taking the opportunity to give back into other people's lives and just sowing back. And we get to see that. So what we want to do, or what we've been doing with our annual gala, is just celebrating those givers. And so we have a big party where we celebrate people, celebrate the givers on Give, Send, Go, bring the team together, and we have a lot of fun. And it highlights one of the features on Give, Send, Go, which is our Giver Army, which has been doing just incredible, incredible things. Our Giver Army, which is just people that, again, volunteer to be a part of a group of people making a difference in the world. So you can sign up to be a part of our Giver Army on givesendgo.com for a minimum of $5 a month. And you set up it's a reoccurring donation, and you get to choose what category you want those funds to go into. It goes through the nonprofit that we set up, the organization. So you get a tax write-off for that donation. You also get an invite to our Giver Gala, a free party where we have tons of fun. Comedians come in, artists, all this different stuff.
Whereabouts in Boston? Like an event center or a restaurant, or? Yeah,
it's going to be in a conference center at a hotel. And yeah, and I'm blanking on the name of the one right now. But yeah, it's our Giver Army, and what we've seen with this is a newer initiative is hundreds and hundreds of people have signed up to just be givers. And they sign up and say, hey, I'm willing to give 5, 10, 20, 50 bucks a month to people I don't know within a certain category of things like pets. I love pet causes, so I'm going to give $50 a month towards pet causes. And that money then goes to the nonprofit charity, and that charity then finds campaigns that are on Give, Send, Go that fit within that category of pet funds or whatever, and then just grants that money to those campaigns. So one of the unique things about Give, Send, Go is we have built in a funding mechanism that other platforms don't have with our Giver Army, which is incredible. We, like I said earlier, give away. We want our actions to be louder than their words. We give away thousands and thousands of dollars every month to campaigns on our site to help see them succeed.
Wow. So time flies when you're having fun, eh, Jacob?
It does, Frank, yes.
It does. So, and Soulfest, do you think in Soulfest 2024, do you think you and your group will be at Soulfest in Greenfield, Massachusetts, out in the western part of Massachusetts?
Exactly. I have every expectation we will be there. Our hope is to be there. We really enjoyed our time there.
Okay, but anywho, my director just informed me that we've got just a little over 2 minutes left. Is there anything we talked about which you wish to elaborate on, or something we haven't brought up which you'd like to bring up at this time?
Well, we hit a lot of conversation, a lot of the topics.
Amen.
I would say that, again, one of the things Heather and I have talked about even recently is we have a podcast ourselves. It's called the Shine Brightly podcast, which is our tagline is Shine Brightly. We want to shine brightly in this world, make a difference, and light things up. But in that Shine Brightly podcast, we're going to begin, for a long time, is just inviting people that were using our platform and raising money on it and having them tell their story coming on. But we've really thought of expanding that to actually people that want to have a conversation with us. Because people come into life with many different backgrounds and perspectives on how you should do things and what you should do, as can be seen by some of the articles written about us. So we want to open dialogue with people from those perspectives. So we're going to be inviting people. You're welcome to reach out to us at info@givesendgo.com to our support team, and they can direct your comment or question to us. We'd be happy to engage with people. So that's something that we'd love to have people do. If people have questions, share about Give, Send, Go. If you like what you've heard today, share
Amen.
Give, Send, Go with the people that you know. Use it in your communities. I mean, we are being used all throughout the United States, like I said, in even 80 countries around the world. But there's a large presence here in the U.S., and we'd love to see that continue to grow. Communities really rallying together to make a difference and share hope with people. So share it with your friends, let people know about Give, Send, Go, and reach out to us. And we'd be happy to be in touch.
So if this has been a blessing to you, ladies and gentlemen, please log on to givesendgo.com, and Jacob or his sister Heather will be more than happy to take care of you or any of your questions. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned next time for another episode of Frankly Speaking. Thank you.